Hello and welcome to the new season of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Mike. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. It's exciting as another season just around the corner. It feels like the last season only just finished, but we're here fresh and ready to go. It was actually very positive news straight off the bat. We saw this morning that streaming service has been confirmed and announced and finalized. So we've got the pricing for that. So we can actually watch the opening game is always a good start, but it feels like everything is in place ahead of the Saturday night game. Well, I guess we'll start with what your overall feelings are heading into the new season. We did our preview episode on the weekend with the Hallenbach boys, but I'll get your thoughts ahead of the new season in terms of how you're feeling heading into the first game.
Yeah, I think overall, I thought we would have done more business, I think, in the off season. But that being said, looking at kind of how we finished the second half of the season, it almost feels like there wasn't that much to be done if we can get our players playing the way that they were under Liam in the second half of the season. So there are some good signings. I'm pretty sad of some of the departures. I think number one, we probably have to be gutted about Elder leaving. As
First time
Australia,
we've had an Aussie in about 7 years, I think.
yeah, I said this in the chat, but give me a ring, sign me up. I'll take one for the team. But a replacement in Vinagre isn't necessarily the worst.
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the preseason, there was a lot of different players linked in that left back role, and I guess when I first heard Vinagre's name linked, I was a little skeptical because of his record at Everton in terms of not playing much football, having a few injury issues, that sort of thing, and coming off the season we'd had and the injuries we'd had, you kind of get a bit of concern at potentially more injury-prone players coming in, but. Look, he's hit the ground running, looked really sharp in preseason, hasn't obviously had any injury troubles or anything like that so far, knock on wood. But I think as a lot of neutrals are saying, looking at the side, with Vinagre and Christie, I should say, as the wing backs, it's a very attacking setup for us.
Yeah, for sure. I worry about where Coyle fits in at some point, and I'm excited for Vinagre on the left to potentially move Greaves back into the middle. I think although Greaves had a really strong season as left back when he moved there, I still think he prefers to be centre back, or it's more his natural position. And I mean, we'll touch on 11 for Norwich when we get to it, but having him and then next to Jones with Christie and Vinagre either side is kind of exciting.
Well, I was going to say, we'll talk about the 11 when we get to the Norwich game. I think that's almost the most fascinating area of the pitch to see. I mean, presumably it means McLaughlin drops out, but he had such a highly rated season as well. It's going to be pretty interesting to see which way Rosenior goes. You mentioned about the business and we haven't been overly active, but I suppose the positive spin on that is we also haven't seen too many players depart. So we've got a really sort of consistent core of the squad, which, you know, along with the fact that we've signed a lot of these guys to long-term deals, Slater getting a new deal, McLaughlin and Jones getting deals as well. I'm trying to think, Vaughan as well, getting a new deal as well. I think he did. It's really positive in that sense to see the club locking down these young players for long-term deals.
Yeah, Vaughan's an exciting one for me. I think there have been loose comparisons between him and Bowen. But it's good to see that our youth are getting the chance. And I think during preseason, he may have almost played every game. And from the highlights that I had seen, he was having a really good preseason. And I'm hoping he stays around that 11 and just the first team in general.
Yeah, no, it'll be an interesting one. I think he's probably in line to start the first game of the season when you consider the sort of the wide options we've got available. And I don't know if you saw, there was news overnight just about that. There's been a fair few different interested parties in potentially signing Longman. So if he was to depart, you have to think that Vaughan, I guess Vaughan, Lakillo, and Ali, I guess, are pretty much the wide options that we have in the squad at the moment.
Oh, I'm thinking about Traore. I think he can play wide as well.
True. And I guess Connolly, if that gets confirmed, I don't think that's been finalised just yet, but I suppose he could also play that wide role that, you know, Tete played a little bit last season at the start of the season. So we've got a bit of a flexible front line in that sense. I I guess in terms of other incomings, there was the link to Max Bird as well yesterday. I think we're sort of talking about it that don't know too much about him. He's a centre mid from Derby. I think he was the vice captain there when Rosenia was there, and he seems pretty keen to come across. So it speaks positively, I guess, to the relationship that he had with Rosenia while he was there. And it's a position that I suppose outside of what Seri and Simons, we don't have a whole lot of cover. So potentially a positive step.
Yeah, it might be. I think he's more of a defensive centre mid, which is probably something that we're lacking. I mean, he did represent England at under 19 level, so he seems to be quality. And knowing Rosenia probably helps and will help Rosenia get the best out of him. So we'll see what happens.
See what happens indeed. Then just on the preseason games themselves, not too much to read into results. Undefeated, but also a whole lot of draws in the games. Do you have any kind of concerns about a lack of cutting edge from the side, or you just put it down to a bit of fitness for the boys?
Yeah, bit of fitness. You know me. I don't read into these things much. I think not losing a game is good for confidence, and giving everyone an opportunity to get out there, have a run around, and actually get used to playing with each other has been really important. So although I don't mind, I think we had like 4 draws and 2 wins or 3 wins. It's quite similar to Norwich's preseason, if we're reading into it.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good segue. What we'll do going forward through the season is this season we'll do reviews on players in the squad. We do that every couple, 3-4 years. Once we've had a bit of turnover in the squad, we'll do reviews of players each week. This week, though, we'll just jump straight into the preview of the Norwich game, being the first game of the season. I think when we previewed the game against them last season, I kept referring to the manager as Daniel Farker, who of course was their former manager. Now they're managed by David Wagner. Different, I think they're both German, or maybe one of them's Austrian. But Wagner is the manager of Norwich now. Had a pretty disappointing end to the season, I must say. I mean, they appointed him sort of with a view of making a charge for the playoffs, and sort of similar position to Watford, where they both really dropped off towards the end of the season. And you sort of look at the press or the commentary around them coming into this season, there's actually a pretty negative outlook on their potential for this season. And some parties suggesting that they could even be in for a relegation battle, which I think is probably a bit extreme. Yeah. But you look at the fact they've lost Timu Pukki. They haven't really replaced him with any sort of out-and-out strikers, so they're probably relying on Josh Sargent to lift the load there. They seem a little bit more directionless than they might have been in previous years. And it's interesting with these clubs that rely so heavily on parachute payments, when that money starts to dry up and you actually see that they have to change the approach a little bit. It's going to be a really interesting season of transition for Norwich.
Yeah, for sure. And then, look, I was saying, like, they've had 4 wins and 3 draws in their preseason. They did beat Toulouse and Olympiacos. So if that's anything to go by, they haven't lost a game in preseason either. But you were mentioning the end of last season. I think they had 1 win in 8 to finish off the season. So it was pretty poor. They haven't, as you said, replaced Pukki, but Sargent isn't a bad striker to have to step up for them. I think last season he had 13 goals. So he's probably looking to keep that going. He's scored a few in preseason. So he's definitely a threat. But in terms of relegation, I doubt it. I don't think Norwich are going to drop down. I think they'll probably push mid-table. I don't think they'll push for the top 6. I don't think they've made the signings to push for top 6. And I don't know if they've got the quality left in the squad to push for top 6.
Yeah, so we had the comment from John. I think the first game last season was Bristol City at home, but it was very early. It might have been the second home game of the season was against Norwich, where Estupinian got a double against them to hold on for a 2-1 win, which was sort of that purple patch of form that we had at the start of the season, and when Oscar basically couldn't miss in front of goal. If you recall, I think it was the first goal where he basically was he pushed into it basically by the Norwich defender, like they shoved him or something into the ball and it bounced off him into the net, but seemed to score a few goals like that to start the season. And we split the results with them last season, had the 3-1 loss at their place, where I think Greaves scored the opener before we somewhat capitulated in that game. Feel reasonably even, though, I would say, heading into it this time around, though.
Yeah, if we're looking at preseason, if we're looking at stats, if we're looking at new signings and gelling into the club, I think we're approaching this game almost even. I'm keen to disregard the end of last season for either club. I think a lot can change in the 3 to 4 months that we've had off. So I'm not looking at their form. I'm not looking at our form. I think just going into this game, it's a very even playing field between the two.
Yeah, and I guess the one player to mention who did sort of come in for Pookie was Ashley Barnes, signing from Burnley. Interesting to see what sort of part he plays in the squad for them this season. Whether he's sort of just a bit part player off the bench, or if they throw him in from the start for the first game of the season. And the other one was is it Jack Stacey? I think they got in from Bournemouth. He'll be one of their wing backs as well. Very attacking player, very promising player as well. So a couple of interesting acquisitions for them, I guess, similar to the acquisitions that we've had as well. I guess the big question we sort of referred to at the start of the episode as well is, what's your perspective on our starting 11 for this one?
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time trying to figure it out because I wasn't exactly sure. I'm still not sure on the state of our players, who's fit, who's not fit. So I think we'll need to wait to see how the next couple of days go. But I tentatively had Christie, Greaves, Jones, Vinagre as a back four. Tufan and Slater have been playing incredibly together in the midfield. Traore and Vaughan on the outside on wings, and then Ali and Delap up front.
Okay. So I guess because that's with the presumption if Sarah's not fully fit for this one.
Yeah. Also, I don't know where I would put Seri given the form that Tufan and Slater are in at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were reading at that line. I was like, oh, yeah, there's not. I mean, the only thing I'd say, yeah, maybe you'd be going.
You could move Slater. You could move Slater out wide for Traore or Vaughan, and then have Tufan and Seri in the middle.
Yeah, or if you had, I guess it is tricky with Oscar and Delap, because if you want to have them both from the start, you're not really bringing in like a number. You're not playing Traore through the middle, where you could have Seri in a double pivot with like a Slater, I suppose. Yeah, look, it's going to be really interesting. I think we've almost got
it's a good
12
problem
or 13 players.
It's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. So, look, it's interesting because, as you say, Tufan and Slater playing so well together. Traore, I mean, Traore's had a bit of an interrupted preseason, but he's certainly settled into it in the more recent games. Look, maybe it is Seri starts from the bench to start with and ease him back in if he's had a bit of a knock as well. And then the other one, like I sort of said at the start, was McLaughlin, Jones, and Greaves. There's probably only 2 spots for the 3 of them, and it's hard to really justify any of them dropping out, but probably is McLaughlin.
I'd say so.
How are you feeling results-wise in this one? What sort of result are you predicting?
I was thinking a 1-1 draw is probably a good result.
Follow the pattern of preseason.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems very even, and it's one of those games where something can go one way, and in like the 85th minute, there might be a winner. But I think the two teams are positioned pretty evenly, and that's saying something good about us as a club going into the season. If we can kick off the season with a draw or a win against Norwich, sets us up really well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is if we can, this feels a lot like that Bristol City game at the start of last season where it's very 50-50. And if we can get the win as we did on that day, it just gives that vibe of, the positive progress. It gives that optimism, gets everything off on the right foot. It will be funny if we did have a 1-1 draw or a 0-0 draw or something like that, because I do think there's a bit of a fixation on the number of draws we've had recently. So you kind of want to avoid that. Even if I don't know. I'm almost thinking, is it better to lose with a late conceded goal if we're kind of pushing for a winner, or I don't know. It'll be a bit of an off on the right foot would be a pretty fantastic way to get things going. Just quickly then, as we round things up, we've also got a League Cup game midweek next week against a familiar foe in Grant McCann, who's taking charge of Doncaster this season. Dropping all the way to League Two is a bit interesting, considering he took over Peterborough while they were in the Championship after leaving us. Looking to get them promoted back up to League One. They've made a fair few decent signings and seem to have had a pretty good off-season. I think they got Tom Nixon on loan from us as well. So they're striking up a bit of a relationship with us, I suppose, through the link with Grant McCann. It's an interesting one because, because our squad isn't as big as it used to be, although we have just said we do have a few decent depth options. It feels you go, oh, well, we could just basically take the 11. But at the same time, maybe it's a chance to just throw some of the other 23s in and give them a bit of experience.
Nah, we slaughtered them 4-0. We play our 11.
Yeah. I mean, look, because the other way to approach it is, it's almost another preseason game in a sense where you go, let's put out the first 11. Obviously, you give anyone a rest who's, like a Traore or someone who might not have 290 minutes in 4 days in him. But, guys like Slater, guys like Christie and stuff like that. Well, maybe not Christie. Maybe put Coyle in if he's fit. But maybe Oscar gets a rest. But for the most part, maybe it's a good chance for Lotu Tala to get a go and goal as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a very shaky preseason. I think we all saw it, but at the same time, it's the best time to experiment. It's the time to make those mistakes and get used to the way that we play. I mean, he didn't get it. I'm not sure he got any minutes for us last season. Maybe in a cup, maybe like 2-3 games or something.
No, because he went out on loan to Stevenage second half, so I don't think he did.
Yeah, and the way we play is different to the way Stevenage plays. It's different to the way that every club plays. So giving him the opportunity to make those mistakes, play out from the back, and figure out what works has been pretty important. So I feel he can now come into the team and just pick up where Ingram kind of leaves off. It is sad we didn't get Baxter, but he can have fun at Bolton.
And Darlow at Leeds, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's exciting. We've got a young team.
It's a young team. It'll be interesting to see what we do the last few weeks of the window. I suspect we'll be relatively busy because I'm sure we're still looking for a second senior goalkeeper to challenge Ingram. But then other than that, I think if we could get, Max Bird as a defensive midfield option, if we get, apparently we've got a bid in for an unnamed winger as well, which is presumably to replace Longman. Obviously get Connolly in on the deal, get that done. I'd be pretty happy with that as the rest of our business and just leave, keep Greaves and keep Oscar, who for a long time were rumoured to be departing. Be pretty happy to call up Stumps there.
Yeah, I would want to sign Haley Rasso though, if she's on offer. But yeah, I'll happily call it there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll call this episode there. So thank you for joining me, Mike.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening in. It's good to be back for a brand new season of Hull City. We'll be back this time next week to review both the Norwich and the Doncaster games. And until then, come on City.